Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back, hopefully for the full duration this time. You are listening
Yay.
to... Yeah, I couldn't come up with any one-liners because last week was such a joke. I figured that was enough. You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio, the official radio show of 87sportsfans.com.
That's us.
Yes. I am one of your illustrious hosts, Keith Grieve.
And I am Steve Taylor. Hi, man.
Hi, how are you, sir?
Oh, spectacular. Spectacular.
No matter what
What's new in your world?
No matter what we do, we are poorer than Phil Jackson. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Reminder that this and every broadcast is brought to you by CG Imaging. That's cg-imaging.com. CG Imaging, virtually creating reality. And also a reminder, if you haven't already, go over to our website, 87sportsfans.com, and you will see a nice big blue button prompting you to click on it and join our NCAA Tournament Bracket Challenge for a chance to win the vaunted Beer Stein of Knowledge.
Dun, dun, dun.
Wait, let me try that again. The Beer Stein of Knowledge.
Well, you've been waiting to use that for a while.
I have had this mixing board for about a year, and I've been dying to use that sound effect.
Yeah.
For the full year. And there it is. I got a chance to use it.
I'm so proud of you, Keith.
Hey, you know what? It's all about achieving your dreams and realizing it. It's all about having
is that what it is?
It's all about having a vision and going forward towards that vision and not making it.
Wow, you sound a lot like Phil Jackson.
Segue. So
see, that was a good segue. Thank you.
Kind of was. We'll take it. So it's now official. We talked about it a little bit on last week's show, but now it is official. Phil Jackson has taken over basketball operations for the New York Knicks, which just cements, to get a little bit off topic, which right off the bat, which is a little ahead of schedule for me. Usually I get off topic about midway.
You can usually get off topic in the intro.
Right. Phil Jackson being on any other team is just another sign of how the Lakers just absolutely have no idea what they're doing. But anyway, solidifying now what has been rumored for the last, 4 or 5 years since he's left the Lakers about him returning to the franchise where he played. The original rumors was that he was going to coach one day, but that seems to be put to rest as he's now taking a nice cushy job up in the front office where he doesn't even have to be in the building very often. But he takes over a team that is a little bit awry, 27-40 going into tonight, and they are currently in a dogfight with the Indiana Pacers, up 65-62 as the third quarter is coming to an end. But they were up double digits at the half, which, it's just a testament to the power of Phil. That's a joke, by the way.
Yeah. Good joke.
So Phil Jackson has said in his opening press conference something that caught my attention because, I would think that being new to the job, returning to, I don't want to say new, well, it is completely different than when he played there. So he's new to the organization. You don't even have your cardboard box that you bring with you on your first day to get your office settled. And he made a comment that I thought was very surprising because it was so committal. I don't even know if that's really a word, but I'm using it anyway. That he felt comfortable saying that Carmelo Anthony was definitely a part of the Knicks' plans for the future. And you and I have gone back and forth on the air about this before. And I know that you are no fan of Carmelo Anthony, but I want you to throw your presumptions to the side for right now. And I want you to put yourself in Phil Jackson's shoes and really the whole front office. But Phil Jackson's going to have to approve anything, so just Phil Jackson's shoes, which I think are pretty big anyway. I set you up for an Ask Jeannie Buss joke right there. I really did.
No.
And you didn't follow through.
I don't want to think about Phil Jackson's member, okay? It's not something I need to think about at 10 o'clock at night. I'm sorry.
When you put it like that, I really can't criticize you for it.
Thanks.
Okay.
But now that I said it, it did put it in my head. So I appreciate that, Keith. Thank you.
I can't unsee it.
I can't unthink it.
If you're Phil Jackson and you've made the commitment to Carmelo Anthony, so let's say Carmelo Anthony doesn't opt out, and let's say Carmelo Anthony wants to be a Knick for the rest of his career, what is your first action to start complimenting him with players that will actually lead to a championship?
Well, I don't even know if it's necessarily complimenting him with players as much as it's making sure that the right coach, which a lot of people have kicked around Steve Kerr, which I think would be a great choice because I've always been a fan of his, and I think he would make a really good coach. And he is somebody that knows Phil Jackson very well and knows the system, and I think whoever comes in, it's going to be like what Eric Spoelstra in Miami had to deal with Pat Riley. You have one of the greatest coaches in NBA history in the front office running, and you have to try to coach and deal with him looking over your shoulder, people asking, him how he would coach the team, and kind of keeping yourself in charge of what you need to be in charge of. Whoever comes in with Phil Jackson is going to be the same way. I think what Phil needs to do with Carmelo is, and why he said that Carmelo is part of it, as part of the future of the Knicks, is if you look at Phil's background, he took two of the most selfish players, in my opinion, in NBA history, being Michael Jordan early in his career and Kobe Bryant, and got them to not only play well with others, but got them to become better teammates. So I think he needs to work that magic on Carmelo. And I don't know if he can. Luckily with his stature, Carmelo seems, at least in the early, sound bites, seems like he's going to be up for pretty much anything Phil says. But I think Carmelo Anthony, if the Knicks are going to be successful, and they are going to stick with Carmelo, Phil needs to make him his new golden child. Talent. It's just he's an awful teammate, and he needs to be better. And if anyone on this planet can do that, it's Phil Jackson. And where I don't know if I'll say that he's the greatest coach ever, because he has had some of the most amazing talent in NBA history, but he is, without question, the best coach at getting egotistical talent to work together. And that I don't think anyone can argue.
No, but I guess my point is that everyone's making such a big deal of him joining the organization. How much can he really do from his position? I mean, he's not the head coach. He's not going to be the head coach.
He isn't, but look at how much input. Riley did end up coaching briefly, but even now,
ask Stan Van Gundy how that worked out.
What's that?
Ask Stan Van Gundy how that worked out.
Well, yeah, but getting off of the Stan Van Gundy, but that's the thing though. Stan Van Gundy isn't like what I said Steve Kerr would be. Stan Van Gundy was a stubborn coach, but he's very stubborn. He's arrogant himself, and he has an idea of how he wants the team to run. So of course he was going to, clash with Pat Riley, somebody who says, "Listen, I have the success. You can coach, but you got to let me give you input." I can see that clashing. Whoever comes in, they need to know that Phil is going to be that way. And to me, it's not like in the NFL with like a Jerry Jones who sticks his nose into things and he has no idea what he's doing. The Knicks ownership, who James Dolan, when Phil came on, out of the blue said that, he doesn't really know that much about basketball. And he's been running this team into the ground the last few years with horrible decision-making and terrible moves. And all the while, he really had no idea what the heck he was doing. So at least now you have somebody in there that whatever coach comes in knows, listen, I'm going to have to listen to what he says. He is one of the greatest coaches ever, and it would behoove me to listen to what he says, and I will become what Eric Spoelstra is. Because Eric Spoelstra, a lot of people say, he might be just a puppet to Pat Riley, but he's a two-time NBA championship winning coach, and he's making millions and millions of dollars, and he's a very high profile face, at least in Miami. So, whatever coach comes in is going to be coaching probably, other than the Lakers, the biggest market team in the NBA, being the Knicks, just because they play in New York. And if they get success off of working with Phil side by side, I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? Especially someone who's young like her, who really doesn't have any coaching experience and can come in and learn from the master, because Phil won't be able to do this forever. I mean, he's pretty shot now, let alone 5-6 years from now. If you get a coach young in there that can work with him, build a team, build a dynasty, and then stay with the team for multiple seasons, kind of like a Jerry Sloan, you have the potential for something big here.
If you're looking to retool the Knicks, I think first you need to start with the point guard position.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you're going to be, I think we talked about this last week. I'm trying to find really quick the payroll for the Knicks going forward.
Well, all I know is if Carmelo stays, J.R. Smith has to go. I think the one problem they have is the both of them on the team. J.R. Smith, as much as I dislike Carmelo Anthony, at least I think he's talented. J.R. Smith, I do not think is anywhere talented enough to get the kind of notoriety he gets and the money that he actually received in his last contract. I think they need to get rid of J.R. Smith and that. So I agree with you 100%. Point guard is number one. And then I would look at shooting guard for number two, because if they're going to keep Carmelo, they better keep Tyson Chandler. Because if they're not going to do a full rebuild, Tyson Chandler is perfect for this team if you are going to keep Carmelo.
Chandler's under contract through next year.
Yeah, so he's staying.
Carmelo's
staying.
Stoudemire has an early termination option for next year, which I got to believe the Knicks are praying he uses it.
Yeah, I don't see him staying.
He doesn't have to. Andrea Bargnani has a early termination option on his $11.5 million price tag next year. That's another one I see the Knicks kneeling and praying that he actually uses. If I'm Mike Woodson, I'm not. I think Bargnani is actually injured right now. But if he's healthy, I'm not playing him at all. I want him miserable to the point where he uses that early termination option and gets the hell out of town.
Yeah.
It's just you're going to have to resort to something, because you are right now you have 23, 46, 60, $71 million tied up in 4 players next year.
Oh, that's crazy.
And that those 4 players are Stoudemire, Anthony, Chandler, and Bargnani.
Yeah.
And it's you have to make a decision now. And I'm trying to find the depth chart here.
See, right now, looking at their depth chart, I would keep Chandler, Anthony, and Tim Hardaway Jr. Those are like the 3, because Hardaway, I think he will be a solid 6th man.
Right. Well, he's a 2-guard too.
He's going to become something. I don't think he's going to be a star. Yeah. So I think those 3, everyone else can go. But if you're going to keep Carmelo, you got to keep Chandler, and then Hardaway Jr. is the only one that I see with real potential on this team.
I say you make a commitment to Hardaway as your 2-guard, and then you absolutely have to be thinking about who's going to be available for next year at the point guard position, because Raymond Felton is not getting it done.
No.
At all.
And he's, with the legal issues he's had this year on top of it, he's become another one of those high-profile statistics for New York sports teams. And that's the last thing that I think Phil wants, is any kind of baggage like Felton. And, I have a soft spot for Felton. All those NBA 2K games we had with Raymond Felton on our team. But
yeah, those are video games.
Yeah, he's baggage. He is serious baggage that needs to go.
Agreed. Agreed. So I was... go ahead. I'm sorry.
Look at if they can get rid of everybody else, Phil Jackson there now. If he gets a solid coach, they could have a legitimate shot. And Mr.
Oh, you are cutting in and out bad.
He kicked around for potentially going there. It is.
Hello. You are cutting in and out real bad there. Are you there? Did you go away?
Yeah, I'm hearing
Oh, okay.
issues.
Yeah, this is Skype issues. Not making me feel all that happy.
Hello?
Hello, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay,
You there?
good. Okay. All right, so I'm looking at realgm.com. And it's free agent types. Free agency point guards: DJ Augustine, Chauncey Billups, Steve Blake, Aaron Brooks, Eric Bledsoe, Mario Chalmers, Darren Collison, Tony Douglas, Jordan Farmar, Derek Fisher, Devin Harris, Kirk Heinrich. Oh my God, there's just not a whole lot of options there. The one option that I would seriously think
I don't.
about, and who knows if he'll ever even, he's a restricted free agent, but Isaiah Thomas from Sacramento. He might be a nice option if you can't get who you want in the draft.
Yeah. And that's the thing is I wouldn't be surprised if there's just a full rebuild.
And that's a whole lot of if. Other than that, I don't know who might be available. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to you have to trade. You have to move some pieces. It'll be very interesting to see what happens in the offseason because there's absolutely no way that you can stand pat with this roster. You just can't.
No.
And you've got a lot of salary being paid to guys who aren't really worth that contract anymore. And virtually no options in the free agency pool. And even if you draft someone, outside of Andrew Wiggins, is anybody else really like going to be a bona fide starter? We don't even know about Wiggins, really.
Well, I mean, now here's something I'm going to throw out there. Somebody that has been kind of moved around, and Kobe Bryant made a big deal of it, but it's somebody that played for Phil that's going to be an unrestricted free agent, point guard-wise, is Steve Blake. Mm-hmm. He might be a cheap asset for Phil to bring in that knows the system, that doesn't mind passing.
He didn't play for Phil. He came
after he was post-Phil?
Yeah, he came in after Phil. It was Mike Brown.
Oh. But still.
Although, wait, now you're making me question now.
Steve Blake is a potential. I mean, he'll be cheap.
He's a competitor.
He's a competitor. You got to think, Phil Jackson, he's been around the Lakers the last few years, so it's not like he probably hasn't had contact with them. They probably know each other. He's somebody that could easily come in. I mean, he's not going to have any kind of ties to Golden State after only playing half a season with them.
Actually, wait, he played in the 2010-2011 season, which I want to say was Phil's last. I think so. I have to look that up.
I'm looking it up right now.
But regardless of whether he played for him or not, he played decent ball for the Lakers. He was the only piece the Lakers were able to move. So there was, it shows that there's interest in him. Other people think he can play,
Yeah.
But
so I mean, just looking through the free agent roster, that's potential. You never know.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, Phil Jackson was the coach 2010, 2011. So he did play a season with him.
So who knows? I mean, there's another link.
Yeah.
There.
Because I mean, really, there is a lot of unrestricted free agents coming up.
Yeah, I just don't know how many are good and serviceable. Well, you brought up Blake, and I kind of passed over him when I read off the list, but that that might be a good move as a bridge to something down the road. You know, no one's going to say, "Oh, thank God Steve Blake is here," but he could definitely would step up the defensive side of the point guard position, and he can be a facilitator.
I mean, if you look at it, the entire Miami Heat roster is unrestricted free agents this coming year. Pretty much the entire roster. So
the downside of that, though, is that Blake's 34. I'm just going to throw that out.
True. But, you know, it's an option though. Like we said, it'd be a cheap temporary fix. Somebody that will, you know, give you a couple years and won't take the ball from Carmelo. So it's always a possibility.
Right.
So
all right.
There's options. There are options.
All right. We're at the 20-minute mark here. So real quickly, before we go to break, I got to ask, who, as we sit today, is in a worse position? The 76ers, the Knicks, or the Lakers?
Before Phil, I would have said the Knicks. But now with Phil, they at least have talent on the floor and talent in the head office. So that puts them up. I would have to say the Lakers. Because the Sixers, they're playing like garbage right now, but they do have some young talent on that team. You know, they're not going to anything this year, but at least they have, like, they're at the bottom.
Hello. Where'd you go?
They are like one step from the bottom. You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, it's just, to me, the Lakers, they haven't hit rock bottom yet. Rock bottom is going to happen this off season because D'Antoni's going to be gone. You know, they're going to get Kobe back next year, but they need to do something with their roster because right now their roster is the weakest in the NBA by far. Like, they're just bad.
The only thing the Lakers have going for them right now is that they actually own their own pick, and they're bad enough in a draft that might actually be somewhat decent. At least the top half of the first round. Not like past, you know, the NBA draft, you and I have talked about this before. You get past pick 4 sometimes, and you're like, who?
Yeah. No, the NBA draft is become pretty much the Major League Baseball draft. Like they just draft players, and you're like,
which is ridiculous when you think about it, because baseball players are drafted knowing that there's at least a 4 to 5 year wait period. You know what I mean? That's why.
And that's the problem with pros right now with pro basketball. And you know, they're talking about the new commissioner is seriously considering raising the age limit again, which is a phenomenal idea because these guys are not getting enough time to grow up. And in the NBA, if you're not grown up, if you're not an adult, you come into the league and you have a chip on your shoulder and you play one-on-one. And that's the problem with the league right now, is these guys are not playing like a team because they're not old enough to understand the importance of that.
And that's kind of, you know, there's two trains of thought on that subject right there. Is that who really learns how to play basketball in college? And I say, no, you don't learn how to play, but you learn to refine your game a little bit. You know, if you're good enough to play in the NBA today, you will be better down the road. But people chase that paycheck, and we're seeing the effects of so many one and dones, and before the one and done rule, you know, straight out of high school, jump to the NBA, and teams waste high draft picks and waste time on talent that never comes to the surface, never shows itself, never makes itself worth that pick, and you get this giant churning cell of crap in the NBA, where the quality prospects never really get to where they're supposed to be, and the big names that are literally flashes in the pan get all the attention, all of the money, and the quality of basketball just absolutely suffers.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, out of all of the players that have came out of high school and went directly into the NBA, the only one that truly stepped in day one and was dominant was LeBron. Because I say the three best right out of high school was Kobe, LeBron, and Garnett. And Kobe and Garnett, they had the raw abilities, but they still needed some refining. They needed a couple years of really kind of getting their feet under before they became the great players they are. LeBron was the only one that stepped right in and pretty much dominated. So you look at, I mean, just on a statistical standpoint, you're 100% right. These players are just coming in. They're too young. They don't know how to play the game. You know, they know how to play street ball, but they don't know how to play professional basketball. And I'll be honest. I really, other than the playoffs, I don't watch basketball because it's painful. It's truly painful to watch. Especially coming. What's that?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
No, especially coming from people like you and me who grew up watching great basketball when it was at its best, and now watching it and you're like, wow. You know, I feel bad for the kids nowadays that watch basketball and are like, oh, this sport is great, and like you have no idea how good it used to be. Like this is garbage compared to what we watched growing up.
And especially this time of year, the February, March, April, where so many teams are just out of it and done. And you know that no one will ever admit to it, obviously, and I don't know that I want them to, but they're really just thinking about ping pong balls, which is a whole other issue in and of itself.
Oh, absolutely.
But let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to bounce around some spring training, talk a little baseball. Before the top of the hour, Jim Saranteas from thefantasygreek.com and Benjamin Allbright, the internet quarterback guru from Bleacher Report, Yahoo Sports, and a whole bunch of other places will be gracing us with his presence to talk NFL draft. So excited. You're listening to 87 Sports on 87. You're listening to 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio.
I go to, it doesn't really matter. Just so your heart's not shattered. Cause you never deal with things. You can just extend your wings. Take off flying far away to any place you feel safe. So stop your running now. Come back and we'll talk it out. Now that things have settled down and we can find some common ground. Common ground. Common ground. Common ground. Rap, 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 rap. You're running, you're running, you're running, you are, 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 you're running, you're running, you're running, you are.
87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio. Keith Grieve and Steve Taylor taking you through the second segment of the program. A reminder that this and every broadcast is brought to you by CG Imaging. That's cg-imaging.com. CG Imaging, virtually creating reality.
Yeah.
Also, pick up the Lockbox by Steven Taylor, available on Amazon.com in paperback, also for the Kindle, and also recently added to BarnesandNoble.com.
Which was exciting.
Absolutely.
That was exciting. And it's weird because I Googled the name of the book, and it showed up in all of these bookstores around the world in all these different languages, which was really strange.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. I want to order it in, like, Portuguese, just to have a copy.
Just so you
Portuguese.
Just so you can see you did it.
Yeah. I got it in Portuguese, damn it.
It's funny, the Portuguese one has a completely different ending. The phone number, folks, I forgot to say it during the first segment. Steven, where were you? Keeping me on my game here.
No one's listening. No one's going to call.
That's great. That's fantastic. 585-633-7487. 585-633-7487. Even if you are not listening live and you're hearing this on demand, if you have a take that you want to share, get on the air, leave a voicemail. We'll play it back at the next show. 87sportsfans.com is the website. Go there and sign up for the 87 Sports Fans Bracket Challenge.
And there's only 3 people, right? You, me, and my brother?
No. Mr. Scottney joined.
Oh, nice.
Hold on. Let me call it up here. Let me see.
Because it is a lot of fun, folks. You know, there's all kind of brackets, but you know, we do a lot of talking during the tournament time about how each team is doing and whatnot. It's fun to follow. It's fun to follow along.
Sean did one, your brother did one, your other brother did one, and Matthew did one.
Oh, nice.
So good to go. We got a nice little competition going here. Remember, no one knows hardwood like 87sportsfans.com.
I don't know. We are getting kind of old.
That's great.
Oh, Christ.
Okay, so let's talk a little spring training baseball. And the boys of summer are on their way back. And looking around, some of the scenery has changed, but not really all that much. So I'm looking around, and I want to know your thoughts, because the baseball season, probably more than any other professional sports season, is really, truly a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yes.
And whoever jumps out first very rarely holds on to that lead. You very rarely have a wire-to-wire finish. Or wire-to-wire leader. So with that being said, do you see any divisions looking around where you think that, God, you absolutely cannot afford to start slow?
Oh, that's a good question. Any divisions?
Yeah.
Oh, why do you got to do that to me, Keith?
He sent you the rundown about 3 hours ago.
I know, but I know I've been thinking for 3 hours too. I mean, I think you would definitely have to throw the AL East, just because you still have the Red Sox as strong as they were last year. You have a healthy New York Yankees team, which is coming off of the whole A-Rod scandal, and it's going to be a year without A-Rod, which is going to help in many ways. And then you have the Rays. You have those three core teams, but then you never know what's going to happen with the Orioles after the season they put together last year. And then the Blue Jays, who were supposed to have a great season last year but did not, who knows what's going to happen with them. So right now the AL East to me is going to be probably one of the toughest divisions in baseball. Going over to the West now, you can't look past the National League. You can't look past the West. The Diamondbacks had a solid season last year. They're going to be good this year. The Dodgers are going to be good. Maybe not the Rockies and the Padres, but you can't ever count out the Giants as well. And going up the list, I mean, it looks to me like maybe where last year the National League had more dominant teams than the American League, I think that might switch this year. That's a vibe I'm getting off of just what I've seen. And once again, you got to take spring training with a grain of salt. I mean, you have Miami right now at 13-7, and a team like the Dodgers at 6-10. So I mean, it is what it is with spring training. You have a lot of guys that are playing on these teams that are not going to even sniff the final squad during the regular season. You know what I mean? They're all going to be in AA or AAA. So you can't really look at it that strongly, but it's just for the moves that teams have made, the health, of certain teams like the Yankees getting better. You got to think it's going to be an interesting season.
It's going to be like I look at a division like the AL West. Like with you take the Houston Astros out of the equation because they're just still a mess. We got the Angels, who were injury riddled last year. Oakland, who ended up winning the division. Texas was right there, and Seattle was not a bad team last year. They didn't stink up the joint by any stretch of the imagination, and now they add Robinson Cano to the lineup. And me personally, I think Cano was a little inflated by playing in Yankee Stadium. I've never really believed that he was as dominant a player as his numbers would make you believe. But we're about to find out. Yeah,
but as a Yankee fan, I agree with you. I think Cano is going to be one of those big free agency busts. He was definitely blessed with playing on a team with incredible talent.
When you're looking at the teams that made the most moves in the American League, the Kansas City Royals were third behind Texas and Boston with 22 players signed. Their payroll has jumped. From 2011, they were at $35.7 million. This year, or last year, they're at $87.4 million. And this year, $88.4 million. So where's the small markets?
Pittsburgh.
Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's only at $68 million.
Wow.
They're the second cheapest team in the league. Only the Astros have spent less. And the Astros are at $40 million.
That's actually kind of astounding.
You know, you got the big boys. You got the Yankees at $192 million, and then the Tigers are the next team with $157 million. So there's about $35 million difference between 1 and 2 in the American League. Then you go to the National League, and the number one payroll in the National League is the Dodgers, who have spent $216 million on payroll. God. $216 million on payroll.
That's crazy.
And that's down from last year where they spent $254.
Yeah. That's insane.
So then,
that is insane.
The next lowest is the Phillies at $170. And then there's my Mets, 78.4. Bernie Madoff has wrecked us. Absolutely wrecked us. And then the doctor said wrecked him, damn near killed him. But
well,
yeah, sorry, I had to go there.
Yeah, I know.
But aside
from
Houston, who's even if they improve from last year, are still going to stink on ice. You got 4 teams in the West that you don't want to fall double digits games behind them. It will be very hard to dig out of that. Very hard.
But like you said, it's what happens in the beginning of the season, what we're talking about with these rosters right now. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, look what happened to the Nationals last year. Everyone was pretty much signing their ticket to the World Series, and
myself included,
because of injuries, because of underplaying, they were a bust. Baseball, to me, is the great equalizer.
It's just the season goes on for so long. You have to be constant.
Exactly.
You have to be constant. You can't get hot at the right time and sneak into the playoffs. You really have to be. You really have to have some level of consistency. You might play better at the end of the year than you did in the beginning of the year, but overall, you don't have these really big spikes in performance for maybe 3 or 4 weeks that catapult you into the playoffs in baseball.
Yeah. And what I appreciate about baseball is it's not like a lot of leagues. Well, not a lot of leagues, mainly just football, where every game counts. With baseball, it's every series counts, and that's what I like about baseball compared to like basketball. Basketball, there's 82 games, but they're playing multiple teams. You know, rarely do you have 2 teams playing each other 2 games in a row. Where baseball, you have those 4 or 5 game series where they're playing the same teams for a few games. I like that. I've always liked that about baseball. And to me, that's something that I miss in other sports.
What is it, Robert De Niro from The Fan? That's why baseball's better than life. Baseball's fair.
Oh, well. Yeah, that wasn't one of his shining moments, that movie.
You didn't think so?
No.
Maybe it's because we had 2 friends that would recite every line to it over
and
over again.
That kind of hurts it. But just the whole Wesley Snipes, I don't know.
Hey, Bobby, now do you care? Yeah.
Now do you care? Oh, my God. You had to say that, didn't you?
Did it echo off your memory there?
Oh, it did. And I try to forget that every time.
Yeah. Livewire. That's all I'm going to say.
Livewire.
All right. Let's get off this schneid.
Yeah.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, it will be the NFL Hour. Jim Saranteas from thefantasygreek.com and Benjamin Allbright. Follow him on Twitter at AllbrightNFL, A-L-L, Bright at NFL. Yeah, that's it. I can't even promote our guests correctly. What the hell's the matter with me?
There's a lot.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Maybe I could offer
blood, pouring sweat. Hey, there goes Joan Jett, you know. Woke up to some wailing. Was Van Halen on my radio. Parachute pants, skinny ties, Michael J. Fox, family ties, 1984. Radio, 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 radio. Don't want no more 90s shit. Nirvana was cool and maybe Pearl Jam, but that was it. Give me Springsteen, rock and roll, Cheap Trick, not Oingo Boingo. Hey, Joey Ramone, leave Michael Jackson at home. Radio, 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 radio. Radio, 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 radio. One-hit wonders, they're all stars. Billy Joe, the alarm, boombox hanging on my arm. Radio, 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 radio.
This intro takes way too long. 87 Live on 87 Sports Fans Radio. Keith Grieve, Steve Taylor taking you through the magic time. That's right, it's NFL Hour. We are joined through the magic of the internet by Jim Saranteas, the Fantasy Greek. Follow him on Twitter at the Fantasy Greek. Representing, go figure, thefantasygreek.com. Jim, how are you today?
Guy, doing great. So happy to be with you tonight.
Oh, you sound so ecstatic.
Today's been one of those days, where you feel like the day has taken so much out of you. Do you have anything left to give? And boy, it's close. I feel like I may not have too much, but I'll do my best.
God bless you for
that's all we can ask.
Yes, God bless you for spending the rest of your reserves on us poor schmucks tonight. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Also joining us is Benjamin Allbright, the internet quarterback guru, consultant, evaluator, featured on ESPN, Fox Sports, Yahoo, and Bleacher Report. Ben, thank you for joining us once again.
Hey guys, pleasure to be here as always.
All right, so we're getting closer. We're inching closer, painfully closer to the NFL draft in May this year. And last week we saw Teddy Bridgewater have his pro day. Blake Bortles had his pro day. The word on the street is that Bridgewater wasn't so sharp and Bortles blew everyone away. At this point, do these pro days, do they have the capacity to change anyone's mind at this point? Or do people still believe what they saw on tape?
Well, if you are employed by the NFL, it shouldn't change your mind or you won't be employed that long. You're talking about 60 highly choreographed, scripted throws in shorts with no pads on and no defense. So, if there's anything to take away from it, really, it's there's really not much to take away from it. Let's put it that way.
Right. So everyone's making a big deal about Bridgewater's gloves or lack thereof, and now he's going to have one for any future workouts. Do you think, to you, does that show any kind of like psychological frailty that he has to rely on gloves?
Not really. If a guy's more comfortable throwing with the glove, he's more comfortable throwing with the glove. I'm not. It's not for me. It's not an issue. Either you can throw the football or you can't. Either you can wear the glove and throw the football or you can't. He's demonstrated that he's able to throw the football with gloves over the course of his college career. I have absolutely no problem with him trying to do it in the pros.
Right. So the last time we spoke, you had the prominent quarterbacks in a certain order. So as of today, how do you rank the top 5, maybe top 6 passers in the draft this year?
Well, I would still have Teddy Bridgewater at the top. The guy's got 3 solid years of tape. You go back and look at it. He's got 3 solid years of tape. Knows what he's doing. He's a little bit weak on the deep ball, but it's nothing to gripe about. I think a good pro comparison is maybe a Matt Ryan with a stronger arm. When all's said and done. So Bridgewater's right there at the top. Number 2 for me would be Derek Carr. He's going to hit the bloodlines. He's got better athleticism than given credit for. And if you throw out this past season's tape and go back to previous years where he actually played in a pro-style offense that didn't have an inept offensive coordinator, he demonstrated that he can throw the ball vertically and do it pretty well, attacking the seams. So he's my number 2. He definitely has the strongest arm in this class. Number 3 for me is Aaron Murray of Georgia. A lot of people aren't very high on him. They throw the height thing at you and then a few other things. But this is another case a couple of years ago, just like with Russ Wilson, where if he wasn't short, you couldn't find anything really to nitpick about his game. There's a few things here or there. There's really not much to nitpick about his game, and I think that he's absolutely going to be a solid starter in the league. And maybe not a top-tier guy, but he could get in the league and be a mid-tier starter. One of that 18 to 12 best quarterback in the NFL, that kind of thing. Number 4 and 5 for me are a tie between Johnny Manziel and Brett Smith. I'm not very high on Johnny Manziel. I think that his size and his game lend to potential injury issues in the NFL. I don't, Brett Smith is bigger, he's stronger, he has bigger hands, he runs faster. So they're kind of the same guy, except you get a little more out of Smith. That's who I have at 4 and 5 for me.
All right. So then you would agree with what Merrill Hodge said, that he sees bust written all over Johnny Manziel?
Yes, I do. I absolutely do.
Because so what do you make of the argument that, I don't want to throw his name out here because it's a totally ridiculous concept, but the thing on Tim Tebow was that he could win, that he knew how to play. So Manziel has a different type of athleticism because he actually has shown some kind of ability to sling the ball, I think, more than Tebow ever did in college. Is there any possible fit in the NFL where he would be somewhat successed?
Well, there's always a possibility. Nobody's 100%. If I were 100%, I'd be buying lottery tickets.
Right.
I just don't see it. When you look at what Manziel brings to the table, it's a skill set similar to guys like Steve Young, Rich Gannon, and Doug Flutie. Doug Flutie, the legend, really kind of exceeded Doug Flutie, the player. If you go back and look at the numbers he put up, they weren't all that great. And with Young and Gannon and Flutie, it took them almost a decade to become a starter in the league. It took these guys a long time to refine their skills. Gannon was going to be converted to safety when he was drafted by the Patriots. Steve Young was horrible. For the Buccaneers, and then had to learn the game behind Joe Montana before he finally became Steve Young. But those guys, it took them 7 years, 10 years to become starters in the league. And it's because their game didn't transition very well, and Manziel's kind of the same thing. I understand that the game is moving to has read option concepts to it, but that has nothing to do with how Johnny Manziel is as a passer, which is he's jittery in the pocket. He has some incredible, an all-American line in front of him, and he still feels phantom pressure. And that's usually a death sentence for a quarterback. The last guy that was taken in the top 10 that had that phantom pressure issue was Blaine Gabbert, and we all saw how horribly that ended up.
Yeah, and now he'll be holding a clipboard for the rest of his life if he's lucky. But
somehow Jacksonville managed to get a draft pick for him when they traded him to the Niners. I still don't understand that.
That really strikes me as one of the greater heists of the later 21st century or the early 21st century. I just don't get it. But I guess everyone has their reasons. So. I didn't give you the heads up on this question, so I understand I'm catching you a little cold here, but I just thought of this question. Last year at this time, there was a lot of, as with every pre-draft period, there's just a crap ton of smoke and mirrors and misinformation being let out. And last year's, for lack of a better term, target of it was Ryan Nassib. There was a lot of rumors about people thinking Nassib was going to go higher, go to the Bills and with his old coach, and depending on who you talk to, they really bought it or they called it for what it was. Is there a guy being talked about in this draft that could be this year's Ryan Nassib?
Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
A lot of the hype came from people connecting with Houston because of the area, or with Cleveland thinking that they wanted him. Cleveland did not want Manziel at all. Mike Lombardi was high on him, but Cleveland, the organization, most of the folks there and the scouts didn't particularly care for him. Derek Carr was their guy and continues to be. As far as that kind of stuff goes. Now, interestingly enough, all that stuff Nassib last year, I was trying to, on Twitter, yell at people as much as I could. I actually had a guy in the Bills who tipped me off that they like EJ back in February. So I was sitting there screaming, don't make the connection just because of the coach. And sure enough, they ended actually taking EJ. So that ended up working out for him, I guess. We'll see if he can get healthy and if he can work out long term.
All right. Any questions from the peanut gallery? And dead silence.
Steve, I think he's referring to you.
What?
So, I'll ask the question today. Blake Bortles had his workout, and sort of what's your reaction to the positive news that came out of that, and how do you think that affects his draft status at this point?
I don't think the pro day really affects it at all. The pro day really for the scouts and stuff like that is to go see guys that they don't know about, in those environments, and then to go talk to coaches one-on-one and get a better feel for a player. The workouts and all that kind of stuff is really superfluous. But, I didn't get a chance to attend Bridgewater or Bortles' pro days, but I did watch the feeds and the throws on both. I have seen them. I think the media is overhyping it a little because they finally know the information is coming out that Houston's going to take him number one. So the media is jumping on and saying the workout was great. I'd give Bortles a B+ for that workout. As far as it goes, he still struggles with the deep ball. He's basically Alex Smith 2.0 when all's said and done. So, I wasn't wowed by the workout by any means, but it wasn't a bad one.
Ben, what about? I know teams are allotted a certain number of private workouts with players, and it seems to me that those would they're probably more important for the teams that are looking at quarterback with that first pick. And I think to myself of Sam Bradford specifically with the Rams and Cam Newton with the Panthers. Those private workouts to me seem to be the tipping point for those two particular organizations on those two quarterbacks. Do you think it's going to sort of be the same thing this year?
I would think so. What it really does is allows you to bring those guys in and run through a workout that isn't choreographed. A lot of these guys that are doing these pro day things, you don't realize how choreographed and scripted these things are. They've been practicing this same workout since the season ended. So these guys have been practicing the same order of throws with these guys, knowing where they're going to be and all this kind of stuff for 3 months. They better, you'd better be good. So, the private workouts really give you an opportunity to explore what the guy can or can't do for you. You challenge him to make throws in a different order, how quickly he's going to retain information, things like that. So I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Well, thank you.
All right. Steve-O, you got anything?
Is Steve still with us?
I think the hamsters have run amok with Steve's brain.
Yeah.
So we'll give him a pass on this one. Ben, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. Benjamin Allbright, follow him on Twitter at Allbright with 2 L's, NFL. Thanks for joining us, sir.
No problem. You guys take care.
All right. Thanks.
Well, Keith, that was pretty interesting.
Well, yeah. A, what happened to Steve, first of all, and two, I think we lost him. He was having Skype issues, something awful. So let me see if I can get him back.
Sure.
But what's your reactions to what Ben had to say?
Just a little bit stunned. I mean, I still think that the top 3 are in no particular order. Are going to be Johnny Manziel, Blake Bortles, and what's his name from Louisville?
Bridgewater.
Teddy Bridgewater. Myself, I agree with Ben that I like Teddy Bridgewater based on what we've seen in game action, even though he wasn't very impressive at his pro day. The Blake Bortles thing, I think, just helps him at least get another look from somebody. I certainly agree with his description of Derek Carr. Derek Carr impressed me at the Senior Bowl, just like Jimmy Garoppolo did. He mentioned those other quarterbacks, and I definitely think those are quarterbacks that will fall in the draft and could definitely be what do you call it? A jewel in the. There's an expression for this. Help me out, Keith.
Diamond in the rough there.
Diamond in the rough. There we go.
Was that the expression you were indeed looking for?
That was the expression. Like I said, I've given all I think I can to this day, except for just this little bit more I got to get out, and it's rough.
Well, geez, Jim, when you put it like that, I feel like a burden now.
Yeah. And really at the end of the day, again, is this going to be a draft like last year where one quarterback was drafted in the first round, or is it going to sort of resemble drafts past? You might see 2 to 3 quarterbacks go, and then more players. Everybody seems to agree that it's a deep draft, so that makes it a little bit harder to sort of differentiate between the position players and even the quarterbacks, I would say.
Oh, between Bridgewater, Bortles, and Carr, maybe those are probably like the 3 most legitimate, top-notch first-round draft picks, maybe, depending on how you view things.
I don't know about Bortles. I mean, I know he had a good day today, and it did help him. I don't see how it can't. I mean, people showed up for it. If they didn't think it was important, they wouldn't be there.
Well, they were hoping to see his girlfriend. That's why they showed up.
Of course.
He seems to be.
Steve.
Do you know why I think that Bortles might go higher than we're all talking about? Is that there seems to be just enough information to keep him relevant. You know what I mean? He's not like Nassib last year where no one really talked about him being a legit pro prospect until like December. And then all of a sudden everyone was just like, oh, well, Nassib could do this. The talk all along has been Bortles should be this. And, I know Ben wasn't high on him, and I really haven't seen all that much tape on him, and you're not very high on him and everything. But he seems to just be kind of lingering there in the periphery. No one's really pumping him up like saying, oh, this is our guy. I agree with Ben that Manziel is probably going to be this year's Nassib, where everyone's like, oh, Manziel, do this, Johnny Football and Heisman Trophy and what are this. He seems to be a little bit more out in the front. But I wouldn't be surprised if Manziel doesn't get drafted at all in the first round, if not the second round. But after those,
I don't know if I agree with that, because there are those teams that are going to take a shot on him just because he will bring fans to the stadium. Yeah. And like you said earlier, Keith, he has that Tebow factor, and not as far as being a good guy, but just the notoriety, and he does have, in some respects, better mechanics than what Tebow had. So you're gonna have a team like a Cleveland or a Jacksonville, or somebody's gonna take a shot just because of who he is, what his name is. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the top 10.
Steve, I think,
and not that I think he belongs.
All right.
Steve, I was going to say, I think you're giving a little too much credit to the name factor. I think the name factor could only create pressure for some of these guys. If you pass on him and he ends up being a great quarterback, people poo-hoo you for that. And someone else. I mean, at the end of the day, teams that draft these quarterbacks, if they're going to draft them in the first round, they have to have every intention of starting them on day one. I just don't know how you cannot accept that in the modern day NFL. You're not drafting a quarterback to sit him on the bench for a year to learn from the previous starter. I think these days that first round quarterback has to be a starter, just has to be.
Looking at the draft order, there's a couple of wild cards here. One being St. Louis. They have another pick later in the first round, so theoretically they could parlay that number 2 overall pick into more draft picks, or they could just keep it and maybe trade the 13th pick overall or whatnot, or keep them both. But you got Houston, who it's pretty much assumed is going to take a quarterback because they're looking to move Schaub and Case Keenum didn't show enough last year. Jacksonville traded Blaine Gabbert somehow, so that leaves Chad Henne, who's not a bad stopgap option, but pretty sure they're going to go quarterback in the draft. You got Cleveland, who needs a little bit of everything, but they managed to chase Brandon Weeden out of town. Just let that marinate. That's how dysfunctional that organization is. They're picking 4th. They need a quarterback too. Oakland at 5. They cannot miss on a quarterback. That franchise, if they're going to take a quarterback at that spot, they absolutely cannot miss because of the Jamarcus Russell fiasco, the Carson Palmer fiasco. They haven't had a decent quarterback there since Rich Gannon. So if Cleveland goes all wacky, so if you have Houston taking a quarterback, if somebody trades up to St. Louis and takes a quarterback there, and then Jacksonville takes a quarterback, now Cleveland starts to get antsy. Do they reach for a Manziel there, 4th overall? I don't think he's worth that. I don't think he'll go there. But if these other scenarios happen, and then Oakland's left holding the bag, it could be very exciting for me to watch.
If Cleveland wants one of the top quarterbacks, and there's a specific quarterback that they have in mind, and they're worried that one of those teams in front of them might take them, they're in the perfect spot to trade up with the Rams because of all the draft picks that they have.
Right.
If they really don't care, they want to ride Brian Hoyer for this year, which is not a bad option, and get a good position player with their draft pick in the first round and save their second round pick for the developmental quarterback that they believe can, one, push Brian Hoyer, but as well potentially be a starter in week 1. That's not a bad approach either. And in fact, I think there's a couple teams that could take that approach, including the Houston Texans. So, I think it's the Raiders. They're in a tough spot because, boy, they do need a quarterback, and I don't know if there's going to be one that they're willing to take at their what did you say their pick was, number 5?
5, yeah, 5th overall.
I mean, it's a good possibility one of those top 3 guys are all 3 of those guys are gone. The top 3 quarterbacks that we've discussed so far, Bortles, Bridgewater, and Manziel, could all be gone by then. But they're certainly taking steps in free agency to maybe not I think they've been able to turn some things around in terms of free agency, at least starting to build their offensive line. So, they're looking at getting a quarterback there that can be protected. So that at least has some suggestion they're going to go for a quarterback, if not in the first round, in the second round.
So, looking at CBSSports.com, they have Bridgewater, Bortles, Manziel, Carr, and then Garoppolo. So if those 4 somehow go that high, you wait on Jimmy Garoppolo. That throws all of the projections off. And trying to figure out who falls to who. After the Raiders, picking 5th, you have hold on, now it's got to load here again because I went back pages and there's going to be audio here. Yep. Look at that. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to shut my mouth and just stop clicking around.
Hey, Steve, did you hear what he just said?
Yeah, I don't believe it.
Yeah, he knows.
I
He
don't
knows
believe
me
it for a
too well.
second.
I'm just saying.
Let's play that back.
Yeah, right.
Somewhere, I don't know where his wife is right now, but she's pissing her pants laughing and doesn't know why.
Because I said I don't know what I'm doing.
No, that you're going to shut your mouth.
Yeah.
No, we do like when you carry the show as far as
You are. You're the straight man.
Yeah, right. But the problem is I'm trying not to be.
Well, at least with the Skype issues I've been having tonight, you have to be, because half of the show I'm like, I don't know what you guys are saying.
I don't know what you did while you were away, but you sound 10 times clearer. You're not cutting in and out at all.
Because I think what it was is with Ben, it just was overwhelming Skype with all of us.
Which is just absolutely ridiculous in this day and age. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Because now that he's, ever since he clicked off the show, it's like I hear you guys so much better now.
Sure, blame the guest. That's real big.
No, it's not the guest. It's technology. I actually didn't want you to call me back until he was gone, just to make sure that.
Don't screw it up. Don't screw it up.
Yeah, that's because, people don't want to listen to me talk. They want to listen to him talk.
All right, so
I'm a realist.
Before we get into the offseason colonoscopy, can we be a little selfish here, boys, and talk about the Chicago Bears in the offseason so far?
Of course we can.
Sure.
I have this nagging feeling that Henry Melton going away is going to bite us. I just, he's coming off a knee injury. Nothing's for sure. But going again, Rod Marinelli is a big part of it. He had his best season playing with Marinelli. I just have this bad feeling like we should have never let him go. More so, I feel a little more than that I do Peppers. I don't know. Obviously, I could tell by the silence I'm alone in that.
No, I don't necessarily. I'm not heartbroken by the Peppers thing, because he is great, but he's. I don't want to say past his prime, but he's definitely not in his prime. Like he's got, and if the Bears are starting to make those smart choices of, hey, maybe we need some youth on the team, since the best teams in the league, at least last year, were crazy young. Maybe we need to start thinking that way, which, I can't fault them for that. But it's just, what are they going to do? I don't know, I even want to say replace him, but what are they going to do to bolster the defense?
Yeah, it's... God, that D-line, it makes me... they're picking, 14th or 15th? They almost have to do something on the defensive line in the first round.
Oh, absolutely. I think their first draft pick will be a defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They have to. Nate Collins is the only... Nate Collins and Stephen Pye, I think, are the only two nose tackles or defensive tackles, rather, on the roster.
Yeah, they're going to be looking... If Aaron Donald from Pitt is there, or Timmy Jernigan from Florida State, they'll nab one of those two. And if they're not, whoever's next in line.
I forgot that they just re-signed Israel Adonijah, too.
I always liked him.
I thought they never should have let him go, personally.
Yeah, he was a great utility player, I thought. And I feel that's how they're going to use him this time around as well. Yeah. I don't think he's back on starters money, so that should be for certain. It's definitely, it's one of those things everybody knows what the problem is. We know they had the number 2 scoring offense, so it's all about the defense. And quite frankly, so far in free agency, there's been really no moves that have been over the top impressive. They're addressing some of their needs, no doubt, and the rest of it's going to be up to the draft.
They were the worst rated defense in Pro Football Focus. The worst rated run defense by 100%.
Yeah.
They had a negative 135.2 rating. The next worst was the Redskins at a negative 66.
Who would have thought we'd be talking about the Chicago Bears like this?
That's just getting run roughshod. That's not being able to tackle. That's poor scheme. That's poor coaching, which makes me just really, really bewildered as to how Mel Tucker kept his job. But
Well, I don't even want to talk about that. I mean, outside of the offensive line, what they did last year, so far, none of their moves on defense have really panned out yet. And you might say, well, last year they drafted 2 linebackers with their first couple of picks. It's going to take them a year to sort of learn things and get everything down. And that's very well could be true. Certainly Shea McClellan is the first pick of Phil Emery has not panned out the way Phil Emery thought it would. And then all these defensive signings that we're looking at here in free agency, I mean, there's none that to get overly excited about. So these are either the players that they believe that they are, which are players that are about to break out. They're catching them at the right time, or they're not.
Shea McClellan being drafted where he was, and now 2 years into it, now they're moving him to a different position, one that he's never played. I personally don't know if he can play that position. I hope to God he proves me wrong as a fan. I don't want to be a hater. You look at the linebacking crew.
Hater.
Yeah, I guess if I have to be, I have to be.
You're being a realist, Keith.
For all of the promise that John Bostic showed in the preseason, well, God, when it was his turn to step up, did he not show it at all? And then the secondary, I mean, between you had Tim Jennings and Charles Tillman, who was injured for a bit, but the safeties were just a mess, an absolute mess. And it's something that absolutely has to be addressed. And free agency's come and gone, and the signings, MD Jennings doesn't do it for me. I don't consider that much of a backup or upgraded. So you're pretty much pinning your hopes on a draft and being able to find. And I really am losing faith in Phil Emery's ability to draft. I really am. As you watch these, and now that Henry Melton has moved on, I don't think there's a single player from the Jerry Angelo era that is still on the roster. So it's a long history of poor drafting and stopgap decisions in free agency that have allowed this team to show flashes, and now it's all coming. The chickens are coming home to roost.
Ooh.
You used that last week, too.
Did I?
Oh.
Yeah, you did. I think that's your new saying. Either that or you're really hungry.
I'm just done. Is there a KFC open still? Anyway. The bucket has come home to roost.
Keith, I wish I was there because I feel like either you need a pat on the back or maybe even a man hug of some sort.
I need my football team to know what the hell they're doing. That's what I need. It's simple.
Jim, I didn't know you were a priest.
Whoa, hey now.
What? It was a little dig at the Catholics. I'm Catholic. I can do that.
Yeah. All right, so moving on. Offseason colonoscopy time.
Ouch.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Turn your head and cough, Pittsburgh Steelers.
Weren't we just talking about that?
Something like that. The Steelers who, well, to say they started off slow would be an understatement. But it really, when you look at the Steelers, it really is a tale of two seasons because you had Ben Roethlisberger, who had one of his better years statistically, but at the same time, they couldn't run the ball. Their offensive line play was probably as atrocious as it ever has been, and some of that was due to injury. But Le'Veon Bell was banged up a little bit early on in the season, and as the season went on and he got more and more into it, he seemed to pick up steam and seems to have the momentum going in the right direction going into this year. But this is a team that was also, like the Bears, getting old in a hurry.
Yeah.
And they didn't really...
That was really their big problem, is their age this past year.
They struggled getting a pass rush, and therefore when you can't do that, that affects the coverage. They go hand in hand. So this team going forward, and you look at what they've done in free agency, which, and I don't think they're going to miss Emmanuel Sanders at all. I think I said that in the NFL preview last year, that we're going to find out that he's not all that. Sorry, I have to scrape for any credit I can after losing the picks contest. So, Jim, where do you see the Steelers going in the draft? I'll throw that out there.
Well, definitely, it's for me. It would be their defense. They have a shutdown secondary. If you look at their starters right now, William Gay, Troy Polamalu, Mike Mitchell, Ike Taylor, where the Steelers have sort of shed the older players, as Steve mentioned, is on the defensive side of the ball. And if you look at them, they're light on defensive end. Cameron Hayward's there, and that's fine, but they're light there, and they're light at linebacker. I like Vince Williams. Right now they have him penciled in as the starting inside linebacker, but whether that holds true in week one, I don't know. So that's another position outside linebacker that they need to consider. Anything that they can get to help them become competitive on the defensive side of the ball is where they need to be. Their pass defense last year was stellar. They were number 9 in the league, believe it or not. The rush defense, on the other hand, was one of the top 10 worst ones. They also gave up the 5th most touchdowns as a defensive unit to the rush. And that's in a pass-happy league. So it's sort of an eye-opener. On offense, I think they continue to look at beefing up the offensive line where they can. You just need people to compete, and they did the same thing there. I mean, if you look at the offensive side of the ball, it's difficult to find somebody who's over 30 years of age on this team anymore. Wide receiver, I think they're probably going to have to bring somebody in to compete, probably through the draft, because it's Antonio Brown and Marcus Wheaton right now. And Marcus Wheaton has no more excuses. He needs to play up to the top wide receiver that he was from last season.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who the highest rated pass rusher on the Steelers was last year, off the top of your head? I'm just asking you this because I just looked it up while you were talking.
Is he still on the team?
No.
Hello?
No, he hasn't. No, he's not.
Oh, he's not?
No.
Well, then my guess. Huh.
I pretty much gave it away.
Well, hold on. Let me take a look here.
I said off the top of your head.
E. Hood?
What?
Or Brent Kiesel?
Kiesel was 3rd. Hayward was 2nd. Lamar Woodley.
Really?
Was rated the highest. He had a 10.7 rating in pass rush situations on ProFootballFocus.com. So Lamar Woodley, number 1, not there anymore. Brett Kiesel was 3rd. He's not on the depth chart at ourlads.com, by the way. I'll throw out the free plug because they're fantastic. So one of the things that they struggled with, they are without the ones on the team that were the most proficient at it. So there is a lot more work to be done than maybe meets the eye, I think, on defense.
Oh, yeah. They were, in terms of sacks, they were ranked 25th.
Yeah.
And interceptions, 29th.
Be very curious because, I think that they also need to look at offensive line. Even though I know Marquise Pouncey was lost to injury or whatnot, but I think if there's a chance to upgrade, they have to consider that. Like you said, talking about the wide receiver situation, I don't really think anybody could look at that roster. And like you said, Marcus Wheaton has to step up. Can he? Is really the question.
I'll tell you one thing. I was really impressed when the Packers drafted Vince Williams out of Florida State last year, and I couldn't believe that he fell to the 6th round. I saw him at the Senior Bowl, and he was a thumper. He was always around the ball. And if they are indeed going to sort of this year work their younger players, I'm very excited to see what kind of player that he is. Another player that I liked and I saw at Northwestern's Pro Day is right defensive end Brian Arnfelt. Brian is a big boy, And one of the things that he did, which really nobody talked about, but it's interesting nonetheless, whatever, I forget what the record was for most bench presses last year. I want to say it was 32 at the Combine. Brian tied it. I saw him do it, and no one else besides him and the fella that benched it 32 times have done it that I'm aware of. So I thought it was interesting that they signed him as a college free agent. I mean, just, they've done little things. They've got some players there that they're interesting. Now let's see if they've got what it takes.
Looking at Marcus Wheaton, he's got to find a way to get on the field. Only played in 161 snaps, and the last 6 weeks of the season, he played 4 snaps, 3 snaps, 4 snaps, 4 snaps, 29 snaps against Green Bay, and then 8 snaps against Cleveland in the finale. If they're going to go anywhere, if they don't address wide receiver through the draft and get somebody that can start right away, that is a big liability right there. What did you think of the Mike Mitchell signing? The safety from Carolina.
I mean, they're basically plugging a hole for right now. They lost Ryan Clark, where he's a free agent. So, they basically substitute one player for another. So, the entire secondary of the Panthers was certainly, because when we talked about them last year in the preseason, we openly acknowledged that they were made up of backups and, sort of the second safeties and cornerbacks on other teams. And really what helped the Panthers last season was their front seven. Mm-hmm. So if the Steelers can sort of do the same thing with their front seven of the defense, I mean, that should certainly help their entire secondary. But, I mean, just looking at their secondary right now, I think they're solid. and based on last year, a top 10 pass defense, I think they're going to be just fine.
Okay.
And let me add one more thing. I actually interviewed Corbin Bryant from the Bills, defensive tackle, and he actually, his pro football career began, after the Bears cut him, with the Steelers. And they're the kind of team that there's a certain kind of player that they take, and if it's like Corbin, they're hungry, they know football, they're going to play hard for you, and, there's no team like the Steelers for those kinds of people. So, I think their personnel decisions are in general good. They've struggled the last couple of years just because I think the name players have gotten old.
Yeah, every franchise goes through it.
Yeah.
But the chickens have. No, I'm just kidding. I wanted to see if Steve would jump in.
No, I was waiting for it too.
You knew it. You could just tell.
I knew it was coming.
It was percolating and brewing. I don't know. I personally like Steeler fans are up there with probably they know football, but they always believe that this is their year to win the Super Bowl, and that's just annoying.
With who fans?
Steeler fans.
Yeah, but at least Steeler fans over Bills fans have a pot to piss on when it comes to that, seeing that they've actually won it.
I'll give you that.
Well, they've won 6 Super Bowls. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and recently they've won 2. So, I mean, that alone is...
And the organization has typically handled itself with class, too. So,
I'll tell you, we have a writer on our site, Matt Hurley, and he reviews a lot of the Steelers games, and he's a Pittsburgh fan. And I got to tell you, I think his takes on their games is some of the most honest, refreshing views of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And for anybody out there wanting to see some of it, go to thefantasygreek.com and check out the game reviews. And we do them by game, so you should be able to go to the Steelers, even their homepage, and see some of the reviews. They're really good.
All right, moving on. We're finishing up the AFC North. The Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals.
Can I say one thing?
Of course.
We need to have a roar of sort when we talk about the Bengals.
A roar? What, like Katy Perry?
Oh, God.
No Katy Perry.
Growl.
No.
Carry on.
Anywho. The Bengals finished with what would be considered a successful season for the Bengals, making the playoffs. A team that is they've been beleaguered. I use that word a lot when I write, I realized, but they really have been beleaguered in recent years. They've had talent. The Carson Palmer era yielded nothing but a trip to the AFC Championship game, which also resulted in a career-altering injury.
Well, that's the thing, is after that injury, they were never the same.
Yeah.
That injury was their downfall.
He was never the same.
Well, he wasn't, but then they weren't either up until last season where they actually showed signs of promise. They were never that, it took a little while for them to get over that whole injury of his.
The Bengals finished 11-5. They won the division, outscored their opponents by 125 points. Undefeated at home, 8-4 in their conference. But to me, the statement of where this franchise is was the absolutely horrific, and there really is the only way to describe it, the absolutely horrific showing that Andy Dalton put out in both the Week 17 finale and in the one and only postseason game that the Bengals played in. It's when you turn the ball over that much. I mean, if people can openly question Tony Romo, and rightfully so, for his complete lack of being able to get it done when it counts, then how can you not look at Andy Dalton's performance when it counts and ask the same questions? In Week 17 against the Ravens, a game that the Ravens needed to win, he threw 21 of 36 for 281 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 4 picks in that game. And then in the playoffs, go ahead, somebody say it.
Playoffs?
Thank you for not letting me down. Against the San Diego Chargers in a 27-10 loss at home, he threw 29 of 51 for 2 picks, which to me says if you throw the ball 51 times at all, you're not going to win. You're just not. But to turn the ball over, that's you're the quarterback, and I, being a Bears fan, I've watched Jay Cutler get roasted for throwing interceptions at the wrong time. You watch Romo get roasted for throwing interceptions. Is it time to start seriously asking questions about Andy Dalton?
Well, you can't really put Dalton in that category because, the other guys are established veteran quarterbacks in the league playing for, Cutler, I guess you can consider Denver a top market, like major market team, but you have 2 guys that are always in discussion for best quarterbacks in the league. Dalton is nowhere near that discussion yet. He hasn't, he hasn't played a long time. He's definitely not had enough success to be considered in their same discussion. Dalton right now is just another young quarterback trying to figure it out. So to me, I wouldn't even put him in the same discussion as the other 2. The other 2 have, they have gotten the accolades and they've gotten their money and they've not been able to produce over a long period of time. I think it's a completely different story.
James?
Out of all the teams, not only in the AFC North, but in the league in general, the Bengals are such a put-together team. Their needs aren't as great as other teams, or their needs are very surgical. There's just certain positions that they need to get a player, get somebody in there. But, they were, let's see, on offense, they were a top 10 offense with the exception of their rushing attack, which in the modern NFL these days, not to be in the top 10 doesn't necessarily mean much anymore in the pass-happy league, but they still have a great set of running backs. And then on defense, across the board, top 5.
Mm-hmm.
And they're returning the core of their defense with the exception of a couple positions, and likewise on offense, they're returning the core of their offense. So if there's a team that's primed to get back to where they were last year And with every passing, you're getting a little bit more experience, and getting back into the playoffs and winning that first wild card. If they could just win that first game, this is a team that, it's made for it. And I know a lot of people had, or I recall, there was scuttlebutt and discussion of Andy Dalton not being the quarterback for this team. His biggest drawback is I think he had 6 subpar games where he either threw 1 TD or 0 TDs. But otherwise, he was a multi-TD quarterback. And what more can you ask, especially from such a young quarterback? So I think he is the player this team needs to just stick with, and eventually they'll line up everything in place. Because this is just, they always have great coaches. They always have good drafts. So I like the Bengals.
He had 8 regular season weeks with a negative rating on Pro Football Focus. You can't. Maybe it's too early to put him in the category that I asked about before, but he certainly hasn't played himself out of that group. How long a leash do you give him? I don't know. I'm not impressed.
As long as the team is winning, I think there's plenty of leash.
Yeah. I agree, and I think that's why they are giving him the leash he has. It's they are winning.
I mean, the Bengals, they every year they seem to be on top of their salary cap, and I think that's basically because they just don't give out a ton of money. They're in a smaller market, so they don't want to compete with the Cowboys or any of the other top players in free agency. They want to give the bigger contracts to their own people, and they want them to be reasonable contracts.
I understand. You guys obviously make valid points. I don't know if he's really the guy to lead them to where they need to go. But at the same time, when you ask those questions, who else is there? Especially if you're winning and you're picking in the middle to the bottom of the draft, he's the guy. He's the guy until they can't beat that horse anymore. So
I think I like his work ethic. There's just so many things to like about him. And, I mean, speaking of being Bears fans, when's the last time we were in the playoffs?
2 or 3 years ago.
Okay. But what if the past 2-3 years the Bears had made the playoffs in consecutive years? I wouldn't be screaming for anybody's head. I would say, who do we need to add to make this team better? What do we need to get over that hump? And I don't think cutting the quarterback would be at the top of my list.
I just the way. I mean, it was only 2 picks in that playoff game, but if I remember correctly, there were some really errant throws that and I know he's only going to be 26 years old or 27 years old this year, but gosh, you just can't do that if you want to be that guy.
One day we may be comparing him to Tony Romo.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Tony Romo now has the most job security in the league because they just signed Brandon Weeden to be his backup. He's not looking over his shoulder at all this year. Just go out and play. But anyway, looking at the Bengals depth chart on ourlads.com, they are without a left tackle. Not a single one on the roster right now. So it remains to be seen what they do there. But going by how they performed last year, they were the fourth rated offense overall. The Bengals were did struggle running the ball. I don't really think that they settled on a running back until it was too late, and Bernard seemed to be the guy after a certain point. And obviously, I don't know about you guys. I think that should be the focus going forward for them. But they need to figure out a way to improve the run. They're a much better pass blocking team than they are a run blocking team, which kind of stymies me because, to me anyway, run blocking is 10 times easier than pass blocking because it's fire out and put a helmet on a helmet and just push somebody around. Pass blocking actually takes some level of thought and adjustment. But on defense, Vontaze Burfict has been a hell of a find because I remember people were naysaying him coming out of the draft, but they did struggle rushing the passer last year. So looking at the draft, their top rated pass rusher was Geno Atkins, who had a pretty decent year. Vontaze Burfict actually made most of his impact kind of drop on coverage plays if you look at the ratings. So if I'm the Bengals looking forward in the draft, I'm really trying to upgrade that offensive line first and foremost, and then maybe looking at a pass rusher somewhere along the way. And I'll open it up to comments.
I'll say this. I agree with you. They do have one player that in college was an offensive tackle, and that's Tanner Hawkinson. I'm not sure if they have any thoughts on plugging him into the starting job, or at least my guess would be they'll let him compete. But just like you, I mean, I'm a huge believer in protecting your quarterback. So offensive line, to me, you need it. If you need it, go get it. But a pass rusher is certainly in the cards. And what else are they going to need? Defensive linebacker. They definitely need a linebacker.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with Jim.
Yeah, and they let James Harrison go too.
Correct.
Who didn't really have all the numbers, but played some pretty productive downs. But struggled on passing plays.
You know what else they might go for is a safety. I would put that in one of their top needs. So you go through 4 rounds and you address those 4 positions, and I think you help your team tremendously. And then in the last 3 rounds, you'll have some choices to make.
We got 2 retreads right now in Taylor Mays and Reggie Nelson. So
it is what it is.
It is what it is.
What it is.
So what else is shaking?
Well, we're out of time.
Time.
This is what it is. For Jim Saranteas and Steve Taylor, I am Keith Grieve. Thank you all for joining us. We'll be here next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. Have a good week, folks.
Post-game show is brought to you by Christ, I can't find it. The hell with it.